Okay. As all expeditions start exactly on time, it is now 10 o'clock. I wanted to welcome everyone. We had, I think, over 400 people sign up. We've got, looks like 165 already on, and hopefully more will join in. Very excited to do this. First, I'm going to introduce our list of panelists. We're going to have Brenton Hunchak, who is the president of RMS Titanic and also its subsidiary Experiential Media Group. We've got David Kincannon, who is into the Titanic on over 4 different times, and an expedition leader, consults on expeditions, past life somewhat of a lawyer and advisor. And one of the signs of being good in those roles is he's been hired by both sides in various Titanic disputes. So obviously appreciated in multiple fronts. Bridget Saar, who is the vice president of the Swiss Titanic Society and has been both on the 1998 and 2005 expeditions. Roy Golden, who's now in this audience and maybe on people online, I'll call him Mr. Titanic, but he has been to the Titanic on multiple occasions. He's the vice chair of the Britain and Ireland Explorers Club as well. So we're going to do this today. Everybody will have about 5 minutes or so to give a little bit of background. Some have presentations with some photographs and the like, and then we'll have some Q&A, and then we'll open it up to questions, some of which we actually got in before this started. Let me just, since I get to start first, I will do so. Once I get to my share screen here. Is that working there? There we go. So quickly, a little bit about OceanGate. Founded OceanGate about 10 years ago. I'm an aerospace guy, wanted to be an explorer, and realized that really all the new life forms that we're going to find in my lifetime are in the ocean. And that's what I wanted to do. And I was amazed you couldn't rent a sub, you couldn't go underwater unless you were a researcher. It was just very difficult to access that. So we created OceanGate and looked at a variety of opportunities of why people would want to go underwater and not just robots. About 5 years ago, we created a subsidiary, OceanGate Expeditions, specifically to focus on the expedition side of this as opposed to commercial and military work that OceanGate performs for different clients. And really what we wanted in the expedition was not just to go for a sub ride and to be able to allow people to explore the amazing things that are in the deep ocean. We acquired the submersible in the upper left there, Antipodes, about 10 years ago to learn about what an expedition would be like with a different focus, not just pure research, but really about participation, media, bringing the experience beyond just the academic community. And then we acquired a steel hull, and built up the sub on the lower left, Cyclops 1, which can go to 500 meters. And then completed Titan, which is our ground up build carbon fiber and titanium sub to go to the Titanic. One of the big things we also did is looked at launch and recovery mechanisms. So right now, if you want to go in a sub, they're typically either small subs for launching from yachts or large research subs that require large ships. We needed something in the middle that could be deployed rapidly, cost effectively, and had to have 4 to 5 people inside, because you need to have a pilot, you need to have a researcher, and you need to have somebody else there with you to experience this amazing thing. And that gets you up to 4, and 5 gives us a better space. The biggest thing we try to do at OceanGate Expeditions is create an expedition and an experience as opposed to just a sub dive and a tour. So there are places in Curacao and Honduras where you can go reasonably deep in a sub, but they're very much a sub dive as opposed to what we try to do. We involve our mission specialists who come with us from the very beginning of the planning process. We've had roughly, I think, 11 or 12 webinars about the Titanic expedition, so we keep everyone up to speed on that. Prior to a dive, the dive team is given an objective of what they're going to do. So you've got 3 mission specialists, a researcher, and a pilot. And the objective may be scan the bow, scan the debris field, scan the boiler, photograph something, And so the team can then get together and decide how they want to do that, and collaboratively plan it out, and then go down in the sub. And in the sub, everyone has a tablet computer, so you can look at any one of the 4 external cameras. You can look at the sonar display, and then the sub is controlled with a game controller, which you can drive, conditions permitting, with only a few seconds even of training. It's very intuitive. Everything happens nice and slow. So a very active involvement. And then on the vessel, you're involved in looking at all the data. We get over 1 terabyte of data from every dive. So not just the cameras, but the sonar images. We have a laser scanner. All of that material can be reviewed, and we can use all the help we can get from our mission specialists when they're not diving. Now, one of the things we learned is there are groups out there, OceanX, the Vulcan folks and the like, that do a lot of dives from ships, and operating from your own ship is really a nice luxury to have. It really helps take out a lot of variables. What we needed to do was to be able to operate from multiple locations cost effectively. So our whole process has been, how do we use ships of opportunity and operate in changing environments? So we've dove in areas that have up to 7 knots current near Seattle, to the Gulf of Mexico, to Catalina, Monterey. A lot of all that work to figure out how do you operate from smaller vessels and different vessels every time. And that tends to be a huge piece, maybe the biggest piece of any expedition, is the planning, the preparation, and the execution. The sub dive ends up actually being one of the more controllable pieces of this. We have coming up in August a planned dive to the Hudson Canyon, assuming we all get out of COVID lockup and we can come up with a comfortable, safe way for folks to be in a sub with 4 other people. We're planning to go to the Bahamas. We've received approval from the Bahamian government to do operations there. We always are diving in Puget Sound, which is a great place to dive, but nobody thinks of it. 6-gilled sharks and whales and all kinds of great stuff up here. But everything is about the Titanic, and that is, as you'll hear from the panel, that's what draws everyone's attention to the ocean. It's the pinnacle of what we want to do. We longer term want to do hydrothermal vents, a number of wrecks in the Mediterranean. There's just too many things to see underwater. But right now, the Titanic is the thing that is really the focus of what we do, and what we're driving to. So with that, I will hand this to Breton, who can tell us a little bit about RMS Titanic and Experiential Media.
Sure. Thanks, Stockton. Let me just get my screen up here. Okay, so just want to take you guys on a quick walk through RMST and what we've done over the last 14 months. First of all, I appreciate everyone taking the time. Thanks, Stockton, for hosting the panel, and everyone else for participating. But I think as a bit of a background, obviously we have been a new management team that's come into place. And I think from outside the circle may not be a bad thing. I think when we started this out, we saw that RMST had such potential. And the biggest potential really has been the community itself. So we've spent about 3 months as a team just reaching out to anyone who would listen. And many people on this call today, many of the panelists here today, were more than supportive of our efforts. And I think that has grown over time. So I'd like to show you guys just a quick demonstration around, what the past has been. And, being new to this business, this has been a very big learning curve for me. But if you look at from 1987 till what we anticipate doing in 2020, there's been 8 expeditions to the Titanic, each of which has contributed IP. It's contributed research. Many of them have brought up artifacts. All of this IP that have been on the RMST dives has been warehoused. And what we've tried to do is find an accessible way to provide this information to the public, to provide it to those that are interested in going to the wreck, and being agnostic as to what group is there. The RMST mandate really is to sort of push the message and the legacy of Titanic to the public, regardless of what group it is. So I think it's become interesting to see this circle come together a little bit. We certainly had the benefit of not having politics behind us, and to my detriment, I didn't have the experience that many of you did. But I think what I've learned over the last year and a half is that everyone here really is pulling together for a common goal, and it's been great. It has been a predominantly positive experience, and some of the things we'll share later about the 2020 expedition, I think are really going to impress you in terms of what this community is capable of when they all work together. And given the fact that my background is nowhere near as exciting as the other panelists, I'm certainly happy to hand it over for introductions.
Okay, let's go to David. Follow up on that. You ready to fire off there?
I'll do my best. So good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. My name is David Concannon. I have been involved in various aspects of exploration of the Titanic for about 22 years. I had a personal interest in it growing up. Not a huge interest. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I'm not a Titaniac. I'm not a rivet counter. I don't particularly care about things like how the ship sank or who the first class passengers were, things like that. I always saw the Titanic as something exciting in the realm of underwater exploration. And I always saw the Titanic as something to strive for. If I could go there, I could pretty much do anything. And I've always been interested in it from that standpoint. And I bristle at the notion that, you know, the Titanic should be closed and kept from the world and left in place, and nobody should be able to go there and look at it and recover artifacts and share them with the world. So over the past 22 years, off and on, I've helped 9 or 10 expeditions go to the wreck site. I've participated in 3 expeditions to the wreck site. I've made 4 dives. I've given my seat to other people in the sub so that they could experience it 6 times. And I led the last expedition prior to 2019 to explore with deep submersibles. So that's a little bit of my background, and I'm helping Stockton and I'm helping Breton. I think both of these gentlemen are visionary, and I think their companies are doing great things, and I'm pleased to be able to help them out. And on that note, I'm going to try to just give a background of my time at the site and the things that I do. Stockton, can you see this? Is that up?
That is working. That's good.
Okay. So this is me as a young man in July of 2000, 34 years old, my first arrival at the Titanic site. I was very excited. I was being paid to be there by Breton's company, and I was integral in organizing the expedition and getting the ships and submersibles out there. The ship in the background is the Academic Mstislav Keldysh, which I chartered, and the submersibles. And I'm on another ship from Oceaneering that I also chartered, and I'm just arriving at the site and I'm pretty excited. The next day, this is where I was. I was making the first dive of the new century to the Titanic in Mir 1, Dive 1, Day 1, back in the days of film, shaky cameras. And I made my first dive to the wreck site, extremely excited to do so, and hopefully that's an experience that all 425 participants in this call get to have someday. 3 hours later, I'm looking at Mir 2 on the bow and Mir 1, and here I am. I'm exploring the Titanic, looking at the bow capstan and the plaque left by the Explorers Club, of which I was a member, and just wildly excited. Here I am in 2005 at the end of my final dive on the expedition that I led, not realizing at the time that it was going to feel like being the last person to walk on the moon, but it would be 14 years before anybody came back. Along the way, I recovered artifacts and I recovered some things that I find significant, and more importantly, the relatives of the people whose artifacts I found also found that significant, and they've always come up and thanked me for the work that I did. This is First Officer William Murdoch's personal bag that he had packed to go on the lifeboats. We know that First Officer Murdoch did not get on the lifeboat, allegedly shot himself, and I recovered his bag several years later, and it's a pretty historic piece. This is also another bag that I recovered. This is the bag of Edgar Samuel Andrews, a 17-year-old boy from England who was going to New Jersey for his brother's wedding, and he wasn't happy about it. He wrote a letter saying to his friend Josie, saying, "You think, Josie, I'm about to go on the greatest ship in the world, the Titanic, and right now I wish it was lying on the bottom of the ocean." And 5 days later, he got his wish. His body was never recovered. We recovered his bag on the first dive in 2000, and his family came forward very gratefully with that letter and has personally thanked me as recently as 2 weeks ago. This is kind of where we are today. This is January in Ireland, in Rory Golden's house with Brenton Hunchak. Going to Ireland to search out the important stories of the unimportant people and to bring the artifacts home to Ireland and to help with RMS Titanic Incorporated's initiative to reach out and take the Titanic places where it's never been before and to cooperate and engage with organizations and entities that have either a role in the Titanic or would like to have a role in the Titanic. We went to Belfast to the Titanic Museum and met with them and talked about bringing the artifacts back to Belfast. We toured the exhibits and we left, interestingly enough, if you've ever been to Belfast, you know that you leave, instead of through the gift shop, you leave through a 2-story high screen of video taken of the Titanic in 2004. And that's how some people feel you should be able to visit the Titanic, is through a video screen in a museum. I don't actually share that belief. We went to, this is the Titanic engineer's drawing room across the street from the museum. This is where we talked about plans to expand and share the Titanic with a wider audience. We went to Loughadan in County Mayo in the north of Ireland proper, a village that had lost 14 people. And we engaged with the Outergool Titanic Society and visited with them and talked with members of the society and relatives of survivors about bringing artifacts back, and members of representatives of the Irish National Museum, all in an effort to pay tribute to this iconic ship and what it represents in an era when immigrants were coming to America seeking a better life, and people that had had a better life were coming back to America after their travels in Europe, and others were just working to provide for their families as stokers and stewards and crewmen. And that's really what we're interested in now. This is what Brenton's interested in now. It's what Stockton's interested in now. Either giving people the opportunity to go to the Titanic and learn more about it, but in my view, also learn more about the people that were on board and their relatives today. And I think it touches all of us. This is primarily the reason why I stay involved. This young man is an excellent seafarer, according to his father, who's a cousin of mine, and he had found out that I was on this island, and he came out to talk to me about the Titanic. He's a young boy. He's less than 10 years old. I don't actually understand the allure of the Titanic today. I don't know why a 10-year-old boy is interested, but I know that he is. I acknowledge it, and I'm happy to speak to him and help him. And so really that is the story of my involvement and why I'm even here today. Thanks.
Great, thank you, David. So we'll go from David to Bridget, who is more, I think, on the, not, I would say Titaniac, but has really done a lot to research all the nuances. Good to you.
Yeah, rivet counter is the phrase that most people use. We prefer Titanic enthusiast. The worst thing you can call us is Titanic fans. You can't be a fan of a disaster. Anyway, I'm Bridget Saar. I'm from Germany. I'm a journalist by trade, work for national television here in Germany, but that's of course not why I'm here today. I spent most of my free time with Titanic ever since I was a teenager. I wrote my master's thesis at university about the discovery and the exploration of the wreck. And let me see if I can share a photo. Of course, the reason why I'm here today is the wreck of the Titanic. And I also have a nice, beautiful picture of a younger version of me in a submersible, the same one, also of the Mir 2 in my case. Long time ago, also 22 years ago, probably the same year. And I was privileged to go on the expedition in 1989. At the time, it was the first time ever that you sort of had the possibility to book a dive to Titanic as a tourist. Before that, basically, you had the scientific expedition, you had to be invited, you had to be some sort of expert, and then if you were lucky enough, you could catch a seat in one of the subs and go dive. And with the so-called tourist dives, for the first time ever, regular people, normal people could go and dive to the Titanic, which basically opened the window just a tiny little bit towards what people get to see from the Titanic. Because basically, what we all know and see is, oh, this is the Academic Heldish, the expedition vessel, which you probably know from the Cameron movie. He used the same ship for the film. All the expeditions start in Newfoundland, in St. John's. Some could start in Halifax, but that's usually, there you see the Keldysh on the pier in St. John's. And what this is the submersible that you use to go to the Titanic. You also know those from the Cameron movie. And here's myself after the life. The great thing about the Titanic dives, when I experienced it, is that it basically was a best of tour. If you go and you're on a mission, you usually have a very distinct goal that you go to and check it out. You can see here the chandeliers in what used to be the Grand Staircase. But of course, we were free of that. We could just roam around and got basically the best of everything. Let me just try and get a short video so that you have something to look at, because our faces are not that interesting, I guess. And here we are. And let's go. Titanic is like this big puzzle. You go there, you see a lot of things. Some of it doesn't really make sense in the beginning. You really have to take what you see and sort of find out where you are at the ship, what this could have been, what this would have looked like. Now, I don't know if you can see what this is, but this is one of the Titanic's boilers. And believe me, I only realized what I'd seen after I had gone through the footage afterwards again. So Titanic is a challenge. Diving on Titanic is a challenge. And of course, it's fantastic that the experts do it, but I think it's very good that sometimes you have sort of a fresh, naive set of eyes, sort of an amateur look at the ship. And even though what the tourists usually bring back is just a bunch of snapshots, of course, it's fantastic because every new picture of Titanic is something that you can study, that you can get new information from. And of course, that makes me happy. That makes most of the Titanorex happy. So I'm gonna go and stop sharing the screen and gonna hand back over to Stockton.
Thank you, Bridget. And the last person on our panel to present will be Rory. It's all yours, Rory.
Good evening, everybody. And Rory Golden here. I live in Ireland. I've been involved in diving since the late 70s. I've always had an interest in shipwrecks. Underwater archaeology developed from that. And in 1985, when Titanic was discovered, there was great excitement. And 3 years later, I was involved with the Irish Underwater Council, and we brought Ralph White to Ireland. And Ralph White spoke about the Titanic and the discovery and the artifacts that were recovered, and so many people were interested that he had to do 2 talks back to back. And from then on, we became very close friends over the next 20 years. And when my career in the music industry stopped, I then started a diving business, and the following year, I was invited to take part in the 2000 expedition. And from then, from somebody who was a wreck enthusiast, my interest in Titanic developed over many years since then. And I've come to learn more and appreciate the stories, as David has touched on, of the people on the Titanic. And not so much the important people, as David has said, but the ordinary people whose lives were completely changed on an incident that took place on a ship that was only 5 or 6 days old, sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. And so I've had the privilege of being on 2 expeditions. The first time on the 2000 recovery expedition, where on my dive, I spotted and recovered with Ralph White the main ship's wheel, the helm of the Titanic, the one that Robert Hitchens steered away from the iceberg. And since then I've become an associate friend of his grandson, Robert Hitchens, or Simon Methurst in the UK, a man I hope to meet someday. I've also met other descendants over the years, and it's always struck me that their stories are the ones that we need to communicate to others. So Titanic encompasses a whole world of people and stories and archaeology and history, and the fascination for the world continues. It's a brand name. You can mention the word Titanic anywhere in the world, and it's an instantly recognizable one. So if I can help bring those stories to life, it's my privilege to do so, and I hope I can help people in the rest of the evening here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rory. Maybe go to some questions, but we did get one. We'll do open questions later. We did one that came up, and I want to just address it. I think the question was, how can you be enthusiastic about going to a disaster? And I don't think that's the case from any of the panelists or anyone who's been there. You know, I think all our enthusiasm is with the history, and just like people get enthusiastic about going to the beaches of Normandy or Gettysburg or the Vietnam Memorial or the 9/11 Memorial, it doesn't mean you're enthusiastic about what happened. You're enthusiastic to experience a piece of history and to learn more. With that, I'll since Brenton used the least of his allocated 5 minutes, and I think has some very interesting things to tell us, I'll ask Brenton a question about the 2020 expedition, and in particular, the announcement that the RMS plans to recover the Marconi radio, and maybe tell us a little bit about how you plan to do that, why, and give us some background.
Sure. So the 2020 expedition is really something that's unprecedented on a couple of levels. We started planning for this approximately 12 months ago. Stockton, you know, everybody on the panel knows as well as I do that even that's not enough time sometimes. But essentially what we did was we outlined our primary goals for the expedition itself. So it starts with imaging of the inside and the outside of the wreck. That helps us with our IP portfolio. It helps us with research about the degradation. And it also helps on corollary projects, including the Arizona, which everyone is concerned about and sort of should be from a degradation and the leaking of oil standpoint. From there, we thought, you know, what it needs to be different about this expedition. And I think that was the biggest hurdle for everyone. And I think it started with artifacts, right? So the 2020 goal is a short list of very defined artifacts from a recovery standpoint. That's for a number of reasons, specifically that there needs to be only a few brought up. These need to be specifically oriented towards telling and growing the legacy of Titanic, and not so much just about collecting a large number of artifacts. When we made the decision to pursue the Marconi, it was a very different story because I think the Marconi is special for a number of reasons. Many people have called it the voice of Titanic, and I don't necessarily think that's wrong. What I do think is wrong is that some people think that it's just a radio. That was a lot of the feedback that we had received, and you know, I'll give you a handful of reasons as to why I vehemently disagree with that. The story of Titanic is really one about overcoming adversity. And I think in today's environment, that rings truer than ever, right? We're afraid to go outside. We're afraid what to do with our families. We're afraid of if we should travel or not. And everyone right now is at home trying to understand how to deal with this new world. And I think for the 700 or so survivors that came off the docks in New York, they had some of the similar issues that we're struggling with today, you know, what to do tomorrow. And the only reason there were survivors, and the only reason that we're sitting here today discussing the wreck and we're able to do this research, is because of that radio, you know, very simplistically. So it created sort of a buzz internally for us. And, you know, we thought that what could be better to tell the story, you know, figuratively and literally to the world, and what could we bring to the world to really re-engage with Titanic. So this is sort of how we came to the conclusion. That obviously is not as simple as it sounded. You know, we had gone through many iterations of the extraction plan. We had bounced ideas off of a number of advisors. A lot of you here and on the call also gave us a lot of assistance on that. But the most important part was we wanted to recover it and bring it above ground, curate it appropriately, and then take it on a world tour to spread its message. Not literally, we're not going to plug it back in and fix it, but figuratively, and tell the story of Titanic one more time. You know, the concept of artifact recovery has obviously always been, you know, hit or miss with some people, and we understand that. But, you know, we cannot reimagine the Titanic story with CGI mock-ups. I think if anyone's read our court filing, Mark Stevenson, you know, contributed a really great CGI mock-up of the Marconi room. And with all due respect to him and his team, it's not the same. Right? I mean, I don't learn like that. I learn with very physical objects in front of me that I can understand. And the 30 million people or so that have attended our exhibitions seem to feel the same way. So for us, I think the public interest in Titanic, in our exhibitions, in the offerings from OceanGate, all are screaming that, you know, they want the real thing. And, you know, who are we to sort of withhold that from them? And I think that's why we're running an uphill battle here. And that's why we've been trying so hard to prove the value of what is indeed rescue archaeology, because we believe that this value has been demanded by consumers. It's been demanded by everyone in the world. And we wanted to find the right solution on how to do so. So I'd like to pop something up on the screen for you guys. This is a sneak peek of what we're working on. And this is compliments of Mr. Troy Lunet. We will keep the questions away from it because we will be submitting some documentation around this plan. But for right now, this is, I think, one of the more impressive things that I've seen the community of Titanic enthusiasts and advisors aggregate around and come up with. So this is some of the tooling that we anticipate to use on the extraction. The court filings that we had previously done in our public commentary prior to this was a little bit more rudimentary. I think as RMST has tried to prove over the last 14 months is that we're willing to take feedback. We certainly don't know everything. And we have gotten incredible support from a large group of advisors on how to change our tactics and how to change some of the methodologies. So these two tools will be instrumental in the Marconi extraction. And I do believe that holistically, we will be able to be proud of the extraction and be proud of the minimal damage, if any, done to the wreck during the extraction process. So I wanted to share that with you guys today. And that's it around 2020, Stockton, unless you've got some more questions about the expedition itself.
I'm sure we will have a few come forward. Thanks a lot for that, Breton. I'm going to switch a little bit to everyone's dive experience. Other than Breton and myself, no one's the rest of the panel's all been down to the wreck, and that's something. Going in a sub is something I find difficult to describe because it's such an emotional experience, regardless of whether you're going, 100 feet down or 12,000 feet. It's just being inside a sub with, anything you want is with you. There's nothing coming into the sub and you're not leaving it. And the sounds are different. What you see is different. It's just such an emotional experience. So for the three panelists who have had the added emotion of seeing the wreck, I wanted to start with you, Bridget. Just tell us what that was like from the moment you boarded the Mir to when you got there. In particular, that 2.5 to 3 hour descent. How was that, and then what was it like to really see it for the first time?
All right. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Well, I didn't really know much about subs before I got on board the Keldysh, and they let you sit inside the day before you dive for like an hour or so. And let me just pull up a short video to show you how cramped a sub really is. If you think your bathroom is tiny, try a sub. Hold on. There we go. So this is 3 people sitting in a sphere that is 6 feet across. So you better take a good shower and use some deodorant before you get in there, because you are going to get close to other people. It takes about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get down there, so plenty of time to ask questions. And then, of course, when you arrive there, I had the totally wrong impression on how it was going to be, because basically you expect you're going to be there like in a National Geographic documentary. There's the bow. Well, the bow's not there. Instead, you're looking at some, sand on the floor, and you're basically crawling towards the wreck, and you're, so eager to see something, anything from Titanic. And then you start seeing on the ocean floor, pieces of coal, and then some cutlery and a plate. And I can actually, I have the video with me, show you the moment that I saw Titanic, and you can probably agree that it is sort of anticlimactic. Let me pull it up. All right. So just sharing the screen again. So this is the moment that I arrive on Titanic, and everybody who's watching will probably go like, what? You can see like in the upper right corner, that is Titanic, the hull of Titanic. Yeah, we're there. But what are we really seeing? So, I mean, you're pumped full of adrenaline. This is the largest adventure that at least I did in my lifetime so far. And then you're seeing the Titanic, and of course it's special because, hey, you're there. But it really took some time to realize where we are at the wreck, what we're looking at, and then later on you see more distinct stuff that we know from the documentaries, like the bow and the mast and the propeller, and it's fantastic. But it really was much different than I had expected. Nevertheless, it was still fantastic. I mean, come on, it's the Titanic, and any little piece of Titanic that I can see, and you try to remember and sort of get an idea of what it means. And the one thing that for me was always interesting is that the small things that you see, like the plate on the ocean floor, is the one that really grabs you emotionally, because of course the Titanic is a fantastic piece of engineering. But the first plate that I saw on the ocean floor, I almost started crying, because that is such an everyday normal thing. And that plate, probably while it was on the ship, went through several hands. Somebody put it on the shelf, somebody put food on it, it was served, people ate from it, went back to the kitchen, somebody had to wash it up. So you've got this one item, and you probably have like 5, maybe 10 lives that are connected just to that one plate, and all of a sudden it hits you how big the dimension of the story is that you're being able to see, even if it's just sort of in archaeology and in traces. So I have to say it's, I mean, you can hear I'm almost choking thinking about it. So it's very emotional, and I don't know any other single diver that wouldn't agree that the first time you see Titanic, it makes all sort of crazy things with your emotions.
That's great. Thanks very much. I will ask you a question that comes up a lot to get it out of the way early. And I know you will have a response to this. When we looked at going to the Titanic, one of the issues was that small size. And that's why the sub we made is 5 feet in diameter and 10 feet long, and why we can have 5 people, and tried to make a different kind of vehicle. But the other piece that comes up a lot is, what do you do about going to the bathroom? I refer to it as potty anxiety. When you read about people's posts, that they're not as concerned about going 4 miles underwater, 4 kilometers underwater to see it, as much as they are of what if I have to do something. So I've heard you have an interesting story there.
Well, I actually had a whole page in German GQ about me peeing at the wreck of Titanic, so fantastic. Well, first off, the day before you dive, you try not to eat. You try to drink as little as possible, so that, even if you have to go, it's only going to be number 2, and it's only going to be once. So number 2 is a no, big no. Just don't think about it. Don't dream about it. It's not going to happen. With number 1, you know how it is. As soon as you start thinking about it, there's no going back. It's going to be on your mind. So we were just done diving on Titanic, pumping up empty the ballast tank so that we could go back up. And basically I had made a deal with my bladder the day before. They had told us the dive was going to be 8 hours, and my bladder was on a contract of 8 hours, and we were in 11 hours into the dive. And the bladder said, hey, breach of contract, you gotta go now. So I asked my pilot, it's like, I'm sorry, 2 days ago you mentioned something that there is like a device. What exactly is the device? So he goes into a plastic bag and pulls out this bottle, you know, this kind of bottle that you get when you're in the hospital and you can't really go anywhere, which probably works fine for guys. And I said, okay, I'm a girl, I don't think this is gonna work. And he's like, oh, no problem, no problem. So he put in this, this extra thing shaped like the female anatomy that makes it easier to aim. But still, I mean, you're in a sphere. It's like 6 feet across, 2 guys that you've just met a few days before. One of them, in my case, was a TV show presenter. That's not exactly the kind of scenario where you want to pee in front of other people. So again, I said, no, sorry, thank you. And the pilot said again, no problem. He pulled up this, it's sort of like a giant towel that you could sort of, with a drawstring, put around your neck. So like, I'm not gonna do that. So in the end, we decided on a compromise. The guys switched on the lights on the outside. I made them count the plankton that sort of flies by the window. And I kneeled down in the back with the bottle and the anatomically correct shaped device. And let me just tell you, it's the loudest pee you'll ever take. Because, you know, you're in a sphere. There's, you know, it's, and I could basically, they were grinning. I could see their smiles sort of closing in on the back of their heads. They were grinning so hard. But I have to tell you, it was so worth it. The rest of the trip, and especially the recovery, was pricelessly easy, while the others I know had their full bladder still, you know, to struggle with. So there you go. That is the most embarrassing story that I share all the time.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's one of the reasons we actually have a separator and a forward bathroom so that someone can have privacy. One of the things that we've taken into the design is if you're not comfortable, you can't observe. And so having uncomfortable a location, if it's, you know, if it's bladder discomfort or back discomfort or something else, it makes it very difficult to observe. So really try to focus on how do you give people the comfort to focus on what they want to do.
Where have you been back then?
Yeah. So the I'll move to a little more serious subject. Maybe Rory, can you tell us a bit about, following on what Breton said, what other things do you think are really critical to be recovered or discovered, you know, sort of the unknown or unanswered questions that you would most like answered about the Titanic that could be answered by going down and visiting it? Now you're muted, Rory. No, now you're not.
Okay. So your question was what other items of historical importance on the wreck we should be looking for?
Yes, or just general questions of, you know, what unanswered questions would you like answered about the wreck? It's decay rate, or what pressing?
Well, the one thing I would like to say, I'm not an academic. I'm certainly not a major historian on the Titanic. I'm somebody who I would describe as a lay person who's gained experience by being involved. There are far more experienced and academically qualified people than me who can talk about the technical parts of the wreck. For me, I mean, my own personal experience with finding that the remains of the ship's wheel was an amazing discovery. I think the Marconi objective to recover the voice of the Titanic is another important item that we should be looking for. What else is out there? Well, there are still the missing purser's bags, which could contain, apart from personal items and jewelry belonging to people, who knows, maybe the ship's log is in there. That would be a major discovery of the Titanic. The heart of a ship, we think about the ship's bell, we think about the ship's wheel. The log of the Titanic, is that there still? Is that possibly preserved within a purser's bag down on the seabed somewhere? All the theories about the breaking up of the ship have been well talked about and have been, again, discussed at great length by people who are far more qualified than me. I think that is something. The other thing that will be nice to discover as such is the great theory about whether Titanic's center propeller had 3 blades or 4 blades. As we know, the central propeller is buried deep in the seabed. If any sort of ground penetrating sonar could go back to that area of the stern of the ship, perhaps we could discover that. That would be another objective worth looking for.
Well, that's great. Thank you for that. And let me cut to David. David, can you give us some perspective? You've planned expeditions to a number of sites. Give us a little bit of insight of what it takes to do this. And also, love to know, you've done some amazing things. What would be, assuming Titanic is the number one thing you did, name another experience you've had that comes close to it, equals it, or maybe surpasses it, but I doubt it. So if you could answer those.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Titanic's not number one. Titanic was a stepping stone to other things. I organized and led the project, the 2 expeditions to find and recover the Apollo rocket. The Apollo rocket engines that launched men to the moon. We found the first stages from 8 Apollo missions, and Rory was a part of that. We recovered engines from Apollo 11, 12, 13, and 16. That was very important. And everybody, my core people on that were all veterans of Titanic expeditions. And we're using many of the same people for the 2020 expedition with Breton. I did really enjoy my time at the Titanic. I think in planning an expedition, some of the things to answer your question that are very, very difficult are, you never know what you're going to get with the weather, with the people. It's very important to choose the right people. It's very important to choose the right team and the right equipment. Things always break when you're at sea. The weather's not good for 3 to 4 to 7 weeks while you're out there. It's going to be difficult at times. Sometimes it's going to be fantastic. People are going to react differently. People react differently when they're on the bottom. Bridget talked about having the opportunity to sit in the sub for an hour the day before. What she doesn't know is that she was given a stress test, and that's what that is. And so you sit in the sub and see how you react. And if you're claustrophobic, I'll scrub you from the dive. There's a lot to it. You never know it's very, very limited what you can see when you're on the bottom. The wreck site is 5 square miles. People don't understand that. There's a trail of debris that goes for 1.25 miles, or 2 kilometers southwest of the wreck that hasn't really been explored more than 2 times that I was there. You're always looking to know where you are and to orient yourself. But you're also looking for things that might trap you and keep you there, which is something you want to avoid. So, it's generally safe. Nobody's ever gotten hurt. A few bumps and scrapes along the way, but it's a big experience. It's the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest or going up into space. And it really, really is. The ocean can be a difficult place, and you experience all of that. So you have to account for it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, as we'd say, an adventure is when things don't go according to plan. And it seems like anytime you go to sea, it's an adventure by definition. And we had a question on authorizations. It's probably both for you and for David. The question of who controls the wreck. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but the U.S. didn't sign the International Law of the Sea. You want to just touch on that a little bit? You have the salvage rights.
This is why I have David at all times. David, do you want to take that one?
Sure. The UNESCO Convention on the Preservation of Underwater Cultural Heritage applies by its terms to the Titanic, but that's largely symbolic because most nations have not adopted the UNESCO Convention. It's been adopted in important places like the Islamic Republic of Iran, Albania, Switzerland, Lesotho. And so if you are in Lesotho, they may have an issue with you going to the Titanic, but it's never been adopted and won't be adopted by the United States, Canada, the UK. So it doesn't really apply except superficially. There is protection now in England, and if you're a UK citizen, you have to get permission to go. There's some pretty strict penalties, criminal penalties and civil penalties if you don't get court permission. There's a similar but not as significant statute here in the United States, which is being challenged at the moment. It says you have to get authorization from the US government, from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. There's no penalty if you don't. The only party to ever ask for authorization actually lied about their qualifications and omitted important information, and then their expedition hit the ship, and NOAA concealed that from the court for 5 months. So there's issues with that, and it's to be left out. There's a court decision that says that you can go there and explore and film without anybody's permission, and but now you know why a lawyer gets involved in all of these projects, and why I have been involved for 22 years.
It's an annuity for you. Yeah, and I think for all the panelists, and I know for Brett and for me, whether you can legally go or who has control or who wants you to go is not the issue. The issue is what you do, and really treating the site with respect and documenting it is really our goal. And that brings it to everyone else to be able to see what's going on. And that one of the questions we got from Belfast Titanic Society was, is it possible to video document the remaining parts of the wreck? There was a good photogrammetry plot that was done, I think, on the 2010 expedition. Our plan at OceanGate is we have 4K video. We'll put 8K on as soon as we get housing for that. But we plan to document the wreck, not just with video, but with multi-beam sonar, which has resolutions in the sub-centimeter range, as well as laser scanning, so that's in the millimeter kind of range. That all gets, certainly the laser and the video is affected by turbidity, how much you can see. The sonar is not. And it's going to take us years to document that, but that's the goal, is to be able to track its decay. One of the big questions being, when is it going to be completely gone? It is being eaten. It will be gone at some point, and nobody really knows exactly how long that is. So ask a general question for those who have been out to the site, which is, when you weren't diving on the wreck, what was it like on the ship? How were you involved? We've had different feedbacks as to how involved the Russian, the Keldysh was, and like to hear that. Maybe we'll start with Bridget, and then I think both David and Rory probably had pretty active roles, but how was the non-diving time?
Exciting, I have to say. I mean, at the time, I was 24. I had never been to Russia, let alone a Russian research vessel. So just being out there, being in contact with these amazing scientists from Russia was fantastic. I mean, all the experience that I had beforehand with Russians was probably watching a couple of Bond movies. So meeting these highly decorated scientists from Russia was really, really fascinating. And of course, they talk to you about Titanic, but they also talk to you about the other dives that they've done. They have done dives on the thermal vents. They had done dives on sunken submarines. So the stories they can share really gave me goosebumps. It was fantastic. And it's a rather large ship, so you can roam around and you can meet people, also people like from the engine room, and they, with hand and feet. Not everybody speaks English, or some of them spoke German, which worked in my case rather well. But it is just an adventure just to be part of this cosmos of science and exploration, and you can learn so much. And when we came back to shore the last day and I stepped off the ship, I turned around and said, what's really bad? You're 24 and the best days of your life are just behind you. So I can only, I could linger there for a year not diving, and I would probably still find something to do every day that makes me happy.
That's great. Rory, what was, you've been on multiple expeditions. What separates them on the top side?
Okay. One of the most important things of being at sea for maybe 4 or 5 or 6 weeks is you get used to routine. Routine is very important. And you soon learn that your whole life revolves around meal times, believe it or not. Because if you're involved in many tasks on board a ship, the focus of the day brings everybody back together on the ship in the galley. And it's a gathering of everybody to talk about what's going on. And the stomach is an important part of being at sea. So routine and rituals are an incredibly important part of being at sea. Learning to respect your space within yourself and around others is also incredibly important. There's nowhere to hide in a ship. You have to bond with each other, because if things fall apart, you have to put it together very quickly. So the one thing I learned on the Keldysh on both my expeditions was an incredible respect for seamanship. I'd never been to sea for that length of time before. And I came away with a whole new appreciation of what life is like at sea, and for those who spend their lives on the ocean waves. And nature, as David has already referred to, has a way of smacking you in the mouth and saying, I'm in charge here, you respect me. And therefore, life on board a ship is something that I can highly recommend. And I can also advise people to be aware that the rules at home are gone out the window.
Thank you. David?
Sure. There's two things. On my expeditions to the Titanic, I never had fun when I was leading an expedition. I never had a routine when I was leading an expedition. There was always some problem to be solved. I remember on one particular expedition, I won't name it, but I made a dive to the Titanic with food poisoning and 2 hours sleep just to get off the ship. It's critically important to choose the right team. There's two types of people on an expedition: those that contribute and those that take away. There's no in between. If you're not contributing, you're taking away. And you are in close quarters, you are in varying weather conditions, and you are busy. And if you don't have the right people on board and the right team and the right experts and and highly skilled people, things fall apart in a hurry and they don't get mended. One of the greatest things about these expeditions is the people that you are with and the people that you meet. And it's kind of a singular experience to dive because you're with two people in the sub. And if you're diving a lot, you become isolated, which is why I would give my seat to others, because they wouldn't get a chance otherwise. But I've met some incredible people on these expeditions, just really fascinating, multi-talented, from different places all around the world. And that's my favorite part of it more than anything. And I have lasting friendships and a diesel truck out the window. It's when you're not diving, we were making crank phone calls to one guy every day at 2 o'clock, pretending we were Russian. He never knew. We were playing volleyball. We were learning. We were listening. We were helping out. Everybody pitches in to do different things, and it's a really special experience.
Well, thank you, David. That fits up to one of the things I was going to say. Having listened to you and others, we look into going to the Titanic, we decided to shrink the size down. I think in the past expeditions, there were 20 plus people would go. It was a long 12 plus days. We shrunk it down. We're going to now have 6 and make people apply. So people apply and then come and dive with us. So we can make sure we have compatible teams, because I think that is, when you go visit a place, if you go visit the Acropolis, seeing the Acropolis is one thing, but it's where you stayed, it's who you stayed with, it's what was your experience like with the tour guide or with your fellow travelers, and that's what makes an experience and something that we hope to be able to do, and really hope to be able to. One of the things I mentioned, unlike some expeditions, when we at OceanGate Expeditions get video content and sonar content, we're going to make that available for non-commercial use for researchers, and not hang on to it as has sometimes been the process where people can't get access to these things, and try to really allow people who can't afford to come with us on an expedition at least participate in the ongoing discovery year after year. We are at our hour, and I will just like to say, if you have more questions, you can reach out to us at oceangateexpeditions.com. Email us at contact@oceangateexpeditions. Look at the site. We can forward and get questions to the panelists. but I want to really want to thank all of you, Brett and Bridget, David and Rory, for participating, and looking forward to hopefully doing this again as we all get more data and progress, and hopefully we all get out of lockup pretty soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, and thank you to the people that were patient with us and sent us questions and watched.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't answer them all. We'll have to do this again. Thank you.